All right, guys, we are on day 23 now. For our do now today, I had you solve the following inequalities for n, and then we draw the graph that represents our answer. So let's look at number 1. What'd you guys do for number 1? Yep, so we are subtracting 5 from both sides. All right. And then what? Good, my 5's cancel, and I'm left with n. And what do I write next to n?
Less than.
Yes, I'm bringing down my less than sign. Don't be tempted to write equal. It's not the same. It's all right, you're not the only one that did it. 11. 16 minus 5 is 11. So we're going to circle that answer. And now what we're going to do on this graph is we're just showing a visual representation of this number sentence here, of this little phrase we came up with, the inequality. So what this means is that n can be any number that is smaller than 11. So to show that on our graph, we're going to label our tick mark with the number 11 because that's the number that we're kind of comparing to our variable n.
Circle our little ticky mark.
Yes, then we circle the tick mark. Do we color it in?
No.
No, do not color it in. And then we have n is less than 11. So do we shade to the right or the left?
Left.
To the left. That's where the numbers are less. Good job. Any questions on 1? Okay, let's try 2. Got -3 times n is greater than 12. What do I do here?
Divide.
Divide. Yeah, this is a multiplication problem. -3 times n. So we'll divide by -3 on both sides.
I messed up already.
That's all right. What'd you do? Did you add?
I didn't divide. I had it.
Yeah, so this, right, and then you also multiplied. That's okay. So whenever we're doing these, I think it's real easy to forget that a variable next to a number is a multiplication problem, especially when we see that negative, that minus. It's like, oh, -3, we're subtracting, so we'll add. Yeah, so we just got to remember, guys, that, you know, when you're multiplying, you can use negative numbers too. And there's no other number on this side of the inequality that we're subtracting from. So it's got to be multiplication. So,
-4.
all right, that sounds right to me. So I've got 12 divided by -3. That is -4. And I got to bring everything else down. So I have n is greater than -4. So this means that my variable n for this inequality, the original one, -3 times n is greater than 12. For that to be true, n has to be bigger than a -4. Can it be -4? No. -4, it's got to be bigger than that. So we're going to label our graph with -4. And what do we do next?
Shade to the right.
What do we do before we shade?
Circle.
Yes, always do your circle right after you write your number. I don't want you guys to forget that. Do we color our circle in?
Nope.
Nope. And then we shade to the right to show that n can be any number bigger than -4. All right. Now, number 3. I've got -3 times n minus 2 is greater than -11. What do I do first?
I added 2.
Add 2. Absolutely.
Why did I add 3?
Girl, I don't know. I can't tell you. That's all right. Do you know why we're adding 2 instead of 3? Good. You feel okay about that? Okay, let's see. Did you add 3 right here?
Yes.
Okay.
And under the 11.
Yeah, so we got to look at what's happening here. I have -3n. There's a variable. So
Okay.
what's happening here?
Let's multiply.
Yes. So we can't or add to get rid of multiplication. It doesn't work. Yeah. Okay, so we got to get rid of our -2 first. So we do +2. Our 2's will cancel.
Got -9.
Yep, you're going to get -9. And we got to bring everything else down. So what am I going to write below this line?
-3n.
-3n.
Greater than.
Yes, is greater than -9. We're almost there. What's my last step?
Dividing it.
Yes, now we can mess with that -3n. We're going to divide by -3 to get rid of the multiplication.
Now we get a positive.
Yeah, a negative divided by or another negative is going to give us a positive answer. Those negatives cancel. So my final answer, simplified inequality here, is n is greater than what?
Plus 3.
3. N is greater than 3. And we circle it. So how can I show that on my graph? How can I show that n is any number larger than 3?
On the middle line.
Right there.
Yep, we're going to label our tick mark with a 3.
Circle it.
Circle it. Do we shade it? Nope, don't shade your circle. Now, which direction do we shade our line?
To the right.
To the right, because n is bigger than 3. So we want to shade the bigger numbers than 3. Good. We can also remember that whatever direction this symbol is pointing, you can almost look at it like an arrow. That's the direction you shade.
I'll look at notes.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Okay, number 4. Or before we do that, does anybody have questions about 3? Okay, great. Number 4, we've got -2 plus n divided by 6 is less than 3.
This tricked me up.
Yeah, this one is tricky because I threw a fraction in there and a plus a negative. Those are both kind of complicated.
You add subtract and you add 2 on both sides.
Yes, to get rid of a negative number, we add. So we are going to add 2 to both sides. Perfect. Okay, 2's cancel.
You're going to bring down n divided by 6
Good, I'll bring down my n divided by 6.
is less than.
Is less than 5. Okay, now what do I do?
Times 6 on both sides.
Good, times 6 on both sides. Looks like my 6's will cancel. So,
N is less than 30.
good. N is less than 5 times 6, which is 30. Perfect. Okay, so remember, this means n can be any number that is smaller than 30. So how do we show that?
Here's where, can I stop you?
Yes, stop me, please, because I bet you're not the only one thinking this.
This is where I think, remember when you said the alligator's eating the big one? Okay, well, on your graph, it's eating the big old 3. So, I'm thinking 30, bigger than that 3.
Yeah,
How is that 3 greater than 30?
great question.
Is what I was thinking.
Yes.
But then after you explained it, we're just trying to figure out n. So n is going to be less than. that
Right, and let me give the explanation to everybody that I gave to you because I'm hoping it will help a little. So it sounds like what you were confused about is you were thinking, well, we got n is less than 30, right? And so if I'm thinking of 30 being my n over here, 30
Yeah.
isn't less than 3.
No, that's what I was thinking.
Right, but that's not how we would read this. So we're going to go step by step here in a minute how to exactly read and make sure we're looking at it correctly. But for now, what we need to know is that all we're solving for is n.
Yeah.
This entire side of the inequality is not less than 30. only n is less than 30. What that means is whenever I plug in a number that is smaller than 30 right here, so I'll do -2 plus, for example, 29 divided by 6, that answer is less than 3. So that's really what we're doing. We're trying to find what numbers can I put in this inequality that is going to make this entire half less than 3. Yeah, I do appreciate you bringing that up because that's probably something that other people are thinking, really. Okay, so number 4, we found out that n is less than 30. So how do I show that on my graph?
30 on the line.
30 on my line. Circle the tick mark.
And then you want to shade to the left.
Good. Shade to the left. N is less than 30. So our graph is a visual representation of anything that could be n. Basically what it means is anything that I colored is a possibility for n. It could be 29, it could be -1,000,000, because this line goes on forever, and that's less than 30. Doesn't matter. Okay. I'm going to tell you what our topics are today. Does anybody still need to look at this and copy anything down? All right. So, today we are doing a little bit of a review of how we solve inequalities, making sure that we remember our inverse operations and we remember how to do our order of operations when we're solving. We're kind of doing them in reverse. We're going to review what it means when we're graphing our inequality. We're graphing our answer. And then we're going to introduce 2 new symbols today, which I know my 2 ladies up in the front already figured them out. But we'll all get up there once we're to that page. So let's go ahead and get started. We are going to start by making a guide to help you guys with solving an inequality. In the case that you accidentally maybe get to a problem and you forget, your mind goes blank and you're thinking, I don't even know where to start. We're going to create a guide together to keep in your notes. So I'm going to have you write whatever I write. We're going to go step by step. So I want you to title your guide, How to Solve an Inequality. How to solve an inequality. Okay. So, whenever we are making this guide, I'm going to have us use a problem and a given inequality as sort of a reference point, something that we can show the steps on, so that it doesn't just seem like information kind of floating around in the air. I like to give you something tangible to hold on to. So I'm going to give you 5 plus 3n is less than 20. So before we can even solve it, something that's very important is making sure we understand how to read this, because math has its own language, really. There's a way that we say each symbol, each number. We want to make sure we're saying it correctly. So I'm going to label this for you and kind of speak it out to you again. So right here we have 5, and I'm going to write my plus in a different color. 5 plus 3 and when I have 3n, how would I read that if I wanted to say the operation happening?
It's time.
Yeah, you could just say 5 plus 3 times n. good. So I'm going to write 3 times n and in the context of this inequality in particular, after I've said 5 plus 3 times n, what am I saying here at this symbol?
Less than.
Yeah, 5 plus 3 times n is less than. Is less than 20. We can just read our numbers as we see them. So we can kind of draw little arrows to each of the things if you want. Is less than 20. So there's a little guide for how we're going to read it. Okay. So now that we know how to read it, it's a little bit easier to identify what operations that we have and what needs to come first, second, third, all of those things. Making sure we understand what we're writing means is very helpful for solving. So the first thing that we always want to do, and this is more of a mental note than a labeling type thing, but in your brain, the first thing you're doing is you're identifying what operations are there. So I want you to write identify operations. And I'll say decide which one to undo first. Because when we're solving for a variable, I always say undo because we're working backwards. It's like instead of doing a problem, we're kind of undoing it. We're working backwards to figure out what n could be. Okay. So based off of our last unit, guys, what do we know about this type of, let's pretend it's an equation. If this was an equation, which operations do we undo first?
The add and subtract.
Yes. So our order, unless we have exceptions like our distribution, those are different, but in general, we undo addition and subtraction first. And once we've undone our addition and subtraction, what do we undo next?
Times.
Yes. Next, we would undo any multiplication or division. So I'm going to rewrite that inequality down here, and beside these steps that we wrote out, we're going to do them. So I had 5 plus 3 times n is less than 20. So you guys just told me we're going to undo addition and subtraction first. So what number am I adding or subtracting?
Minus 5 on each.
Yes, we're going to subtract 5 on each side. All right, and we know that's going to make our 5's gone. And we would be left with 3 times n is less than 20 minus 5, 15. Okay, now we can do step 2. There's no more addition or subtraction left. we're going to divide by 3. Perfect. Okay. And we know that's going to cancel out our 3's. So we'll be left with n is less than 15 divided by 3. 5. Good. So we just found n is less than 5. And again, we'll label how we read this. I'm going to say n is less than 5. N is less than 5. All right. So step 1 was identifying the operations, deciding which one to undo, and then within step 1 we actually do that. We undo everything. So step 2 is once we have solved for n, we begin making our graph. Okay, so whenever we are making a graph to represent the possible values of n, first of all, I'm going to actually have you guys write down what the graph is showing us, because I think sometimes we forget. Sometimes it's more like, well, I'm going to circle this and shade it this way because I know that when I see that symbol it's supposed to go that way. But I don't want you to just do it because I'm telling you that's how we do it. I want you to understand what it's telling us. What is it showing us and why it works? Why are we doing it that way specifically? So the graph of an inequality is just showing you visually all the numbers that n could be. The graph is a representation of the possible variable values. Okay, so let's see if I can, let me think, what would a simple way to say that be? I don't want you guys to have to write a whole novel.
The graph represents what n is.
Yeah, okay, I like that. Your graph represents what n is, or what it could be.
Is what n could be.
Yeah, so your graph represents, I'm going to say your graph represents all possible values for n. All possible values for n, and those values have to make the original inequality true. That's kind of the key piece there. Your graph represents all possible values for n that make the inequality true. So whatever number I plug in for n, it has to be true when I read it back. For example, we got n is less than 5. If I plug a number in that is less than 5 into here, I should come up with whatever 5 plus 3 times, I'd say 4, for example. It better be less than 20. We also know that I cannot plug in 5 for n, because if I took 5 replaced n with it, then I would have 5 is less than 5. And is that true?
No.
It is not true. 5 is not less than 5. 5 is equal to 5. And that's an entirely different graph. I could show you that, but it's not this. Okay. All right, so we know what our graph is telling us. Let's create a little checklist for whenever we do draw our graph. There's 3 things that your graph must have. First of all, your graph has to have the number written above the tick mark. So that's that piece, the number. The next thing your graph has to have is the circle. Whether it's an open circle or a closed circle, it's gotta be there.
It can't be shaded, right?
Not for this case, no.
Okay.
But we're gonna see one where we do shade it here in just a minute.
Uh-oh.
I know it. It's gonna be that new symbol we learn about.
Yeah.
And then the third thing that we have to have in our graph is the shading in the direction that accurately represents our inequality. So we're adding on every time. I've got my circle, I've got my number, and for example, I'm gonna put it this way. All right, so there's the 3 pieces your graph must have. If you are missing one of those, your graph is not complete. So let's draw a graph now. Whenever I do quiz you over inequalities, you will be given the line, the tick mark, and the plus and the minus already. All I'm quizzing you over is getting the correct number, knowing which direction to shade, and knowing if your circle should be empty or if your circle should be shaded in. Right now we're only doing empty circles, so we don't need to worry about that detail at the moment. So let's go ahead and draw the graph of the answer we found here. We know that n is a number less than 5. So how are we going to show that on our graph?
5 in a circle.
Yes, first we're going to do the first thing it says to do. Write the number. 5 is our number. Then we need to do what? Circle. And right now we're just working with open circles. And just for, I guess not just for my help, this is for everybody's help. Please make your circle big enough that I can tell very easily it's an open circle. Because if you make a teeny tiny circle and I can't tell if it's open or shaded or what's going on there, it's going to be tougher for me to tell what your answer is trying to tell me or show me. I need you to make it really obvious what it is. Finally, we've done our number circle. What's last? Shading. So our graph is showing the possible values for n, and we know n has to be less than 5. So which direction do I shade? To the left, where the numbers get smaller. Good. So this graph is just showing a visual representation of n being less than 5. And this shaded portion right here, this is all the numbers that are less than 5. Say numbers less than 5. All right. So, there's our little guide. How do we feel about that?
Good?
Good?
Yep.
Good. All right. Can I move this page or does anyone still need it? Okay, I'm going to move it. Here we go. We are learning our new symbols right now. So, we're going to make a little key, and this is, so the page that we just made and this next page are going to be reference pages that if you need a sticky note to mark it in your notebook, I've got them right here. You're welcome to take what you need. I would make sure that you know where these pages are so that if you ever are forgetting which way it should be shaded, or if your circle should be open or closed, or what order to do things in, you're able to easily reference them. So again, I got some sticky notes. If y'all want them, you're welcome to take them. So we're going to title our next page of notes, Inequality Symbols. So, we know 2 of the symbols, but there are 4 symbols actually. We're going to learn about 2 more today. Symbol number 1 is this one. Number 2, this is a new one. Number 3, this one we know, and lastly, here's number 4. Okay, so let's label these. And I did not draw those very nicely, but it's okay. So how do we read this symbol?
Less than.
Less than, good. So I'm going to write less than. Let's just label at least the ones that we do know. Let's look at number 3 after that. What's this one? Greater than, good. All right. Here's our new ones. The second symbol looks a lot like our less than symbol, but there's an extra little line drawn under it. Does anybody know what this symbol's called? That's half of it. Half of it is equal to.
Less than, equal to.
Yes. So we name this symbol less than or equal to. And it'll make much more sense when I give it to you in context, when you see it in between some numbers. So if number 2 is less than or equal to, what do you think number 4 is?
Greater than or equal.
Yeah, greater than or equal to. Good. Greater than or equal to. So let's reason something for a minute.
You had to take a breath on that.
What'd you say?
I had to take a breath on that.
I'm sorry, Lewis. I'm sorry.
Threw me for a loop.
I know. Okay, so let's use the inequality that we just solved to talk about this symbol. We got n is less than 5. So our first symbol is less than. Let's just draw a little guide for each one of these. I'm going to make a graph for each of these symbols, so that anytime I forget how to graph with any of these symbols, I have a key right here, okay? This is going to be something that you want to keep track of. So like I said, if you need a sticky note or a paper clip or something to mark your guide where it is, I've got tons of them at my desk, and you're welcome to take them. So, let's start by labeling this graph. N is less than 5. We have N is less than 5. Okay, so remind me, guys, how would I draw the graph of N is less than 5? Yes, we would put a 5 up here, and then I'm going to use a color to do my shading. Use red since we're less. All right, so what am I going to, yes, circle. Do I color my circle in? No. It's open because N is only a number that's less than 5. It can't be 5. Now we're going to shade. Here we go.
As predicted, do we color it in when we're equal to
Yes.
less than?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. So
Wow.
let's reason this for a second. Whenever we shade a part of our graph, it means that it's a possible number that N could be. So we didn't shade 5 here because N is less than 5. If N was less than or equal to 5, 5 is included now.
Yeah,
Right.
it makes sense.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
It makes sense. We do everything for a reason here.
Makes sense.
I know it. All right, so now let's look at number 2. Just like we said, now we're not going to write N is less than 5, and I'm going to kind of circle each of those. I'm going to write N is less than or equal to 5. This is completely different from this. These are two different statements here. So we graph them differently too. And I think you guys will be happy to know that the difference isn't huge. It's just like what Lewis said. Do you think we should? Yep, we're going to just shade the circle in. So we drew our 5. Now we need to circle our tick mark. And remember on the first one, we didn't color it in because 5's not included. But this time, N could be equal to 5. So
Still shade it?
we're going to shade it. Yeah.
Oh, still do shade the side?
Yep, still do, because N can either be less than 5 or it can be equal to 5. That's the only thing different, guys. You just color the circle in this time. That's it. And I'll show you this just for fun. Let me grab a sticky note. So I said earlier something about the graph of N equals 5. Here's what that would look like. Okay, so I label it. I draw my 5. And if I wanted to show that N is equal to 5, and that's the only answer, we would just do this. That's the graph of N equals 5. That's it.
It is simple.
Right, it is very simple. It looks so scary when you don't know how to do it. But then once you get down to it and break it down step by step, it's not so bad.
No.
It's really not. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But the way, can I say something?
Yeah, please.
That, less than or equal to?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I see where we got the number up top, and we shade, the reason why we shaded in,
Yeah.
okay? But if it's less than or equal to, then why are we not shading in both sides?
Because if I were to shade this side, that would represent numbers that are bigger or greater than 5. No, that's a great question. If you guys have any questions like that, ask. No question is a bad question. I appreciate that.
But I forgot, I wasn't thinking the negative is to the left. And
Right.
the positive is to the right.
And you know what? If it helps to kind of conceptualize it more and add more numbers to this, just remember the number that we're circling is our N value where we're starting, but really this is a number line. Like there's a 6 over here and a 7 and an 8 and a 9, and it goes on forever. And then there's a 4 because it gets smaller here. 3, 2, 1, 0, -1, -2. We're just working on a number line. We're just working on a number line. I just made it, I wanted it to look a little bit less congested.
Cluttered.
Yeah, cluttered. Right. So if it helps you to understand what's really happening, if you want to draw the numbers, I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that. Just for the sake of time and neatness, I usually leave the other numbers out. Okay. Third one, we're going to write the graph of n is greater than 5. So how would we do that? Okay, so we're gonna, what number am I writing here? 5, good. And you said I'm gonna have a circle and it's gonna be open. We don't shade it because if n is bigger than 5, n cannot be 5. 5 is not bigger than 5, it's equal to. So we know that it's anything bigger than 5, so we shade as the numbers get bigger to the right side. Good job. Good job. And I bet you guys can already guess what we're going to do for n is greater than or equal to 5. What's going to be the difference here, guys? You're just shading that circle. That's all. That's the only difference. Just color the circle in because now 5 is a possibility for n. N can be 5. All right. That's it, guys. That's the lesson. Not too bad today. Not too bad. Y'all are doing great. Okay.
Is it okay if I turn this back in?
Yeah, absolutely. No, if you don't need the worksheet or don't want it, you don't have to take it.
No, I can't do it and turn it back in.
Oh, okay. So if you have, I'll put this on the video too, because I didn't say it during first period. So I passed out this worksheet, okay? If you are wanting to work through it and bring it back, instead of turning it into me, I'm going to have an answer key, quick flash of it. Don't look at the answers though. I'm going to put an answer key on that table so that you'll be able to check your work. All right, and let me give you an exit ticket.
Oh.
All right. I didn't finish my answer key yet, but
It's looking good.
I bet if you guys got it right so far, I bet y'all have got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, good. And I'll try to finish it while you guys are doing your exit ticket. I'll finish it. All right, your exit ticket is 2 questions today. Boom. Do that. That's it. Once you do those 2, you are free to go.